Welcome to Well To Do. I'm Andi Lew and I'm so excited to have our guest today, Curtis Stone, who is another fellow Aussie.
Yes.
And before we get into our podcast episode, I would like to thank Kylo, who is our sponsor for today's episode. They're an Australian nutrition brand and they're also branching out into the US, just like us two Aussies have been. And they look after every aspect from sleeping well to our hair, skin and nails. And all of the range have 15 to 20 grams worth of quality collagen in them. And the three aspects of health are great for gut health, hair, skin and nails and all the rest of it. But you know what is so important is understanding why I've got you on the show. Because when I looked at your long bio, I had to make myself a cup of tea, Curtis. And if I may say a little of the beautiful things about you,
Okay.
I sat down to read this, and of course you do live in LA. You've been living here for 16 years with your beautiful wife and two boys, but originally from Melbourne, so am I. And now
Great
we're in
city.
this amazing restaurant, Gwen, who, if you would like to share this brand new news, you won a Michelin star.
Yeah, just yesterday or 2 days ago. It feels
Yeah.
like yesterday because we've been partying for 2 days. But yeah, very exciting.
You're celebrating all the success.
Yep.
And some of the shows you've been on, you've been having guest appearance in, Top Chef Masters, you're Emmy nominated Top Chef Junior, and you've done work with the NBC. You've got so much to celebrate, including your other restaurant. This isn't your first restaurant. You've got one in Beverly Hills. It's got also won accolades.
Yep.
Do you want to keep telling me your bio? It's just endless, isn't it? I'm just like scrolling away here. I think there's so many things to celebrate about you, and I would encourage everyone to just have a look at who Curtis Stone is. I ran into you at Soho House in West Hollywood.
That's how fancy we are, you guys. We just hang out at the best places.
Well, you were having a meeting and so was I, but the funny thing is that when I was kind of running back towards from moving my car, I was like going, oh, hi, I know you. But I realised I didn't know you, but I knew you because you're everywhere in Australia, and our Australian audience would have seen you on Coles ads as well.
Right.
But everyone knows who Curtis Stone is. So without any further ado, we'll leave the introduction because you don't need one, basically. And then we just had a hug over a handshake, because that's what we do. Us
Yep.
Aussies are very warm. And that beautiful sort of moment of going, well, you're an Aussie, you're in LA, let's be friends.
Absolutely.
And so because Well To Do is all about feeling well and all the things that you need to do to create an abundance of wellness,
Right.
I wanted to sort of hone in on, I guess, what makes us Aussies feel so welcomed in LA, and what is the drive for us? Like, most people work for love, come here for work or love, but you ended up with both. But what
Right.
brought you here, and did it take courage to get here?
I actually came here totally by accident.
Okay.
I was living in London, very, very happy. I had a great job and an apartment and a girlfriend. My whole life was quite complete. But I decided to have my 30th birthday in Las Vegas.
Oh,
Because
yeah.
half my mates were Aussies and half of them were Brits.
Yep.
So I was like, right in the middle is America. Let's do a party there.
Yeah.
And just before November, which is when my birthday was, I got this call to do a TV show called Take Home Chef,
Yeah.
which was the silliest idea for a show I'd ever heard. But I was like, you know what? If you want to shoot it in LA, I could be available in November, because I thought I'll get a free flight. They'll fly me over to LA and I'll do the thing, and then I can go and have my party in Las Vegas and come home. So I did that, and they picked the show up, and I wasn't really expecting that to happen. And we ended up doing 140 episodes of that TV show. So I sort of just landed in LA and started working straight away, and to be honest, didn't love the city. I sort of got here and I was like, oh, it's spread out, and I didn't know anyone. And
You have to drive everywhere.
right, and everything I'd left in London, I sort of had left it temporarily.
Yeah.
But then LA's got that way of sort of getting its hands around you, and one thing led to another, and I'd been here for a couple of years working, and I think at that point I sort of got someone to pack up my apartment for me and send over my stuff. And
Yeah.
I still don't ever feel like I quite left London, but I clearly have. I've been
Yeah.
here for more than 15 years now. So
Exactly, and this is it. But when you say it has this way of grabbing you, what is that? Is it the enigmatic energy of the most talented people in the world, all gravitating towards the City of Angels? Or
I just think it's the good weather.
Yeah. Okay.
No, I think, look, it's one of
true.
those. It's one of those places that is an exciting city to be in because there's always something going on. There's always people, like you say, that come here for different reasons, but it's a creative joint. There's a lot of film and music that gets made here. And, you know, I like to think it's a place that also has wonderful food now.
Yeah.
It wasn't always known for its food, but I think there really are great restaurants here in Los Angeles. And you're always half an hour from the beach, and the weather is always unbelievably good.
Yeah.
So there's a lot to like.
There's a lot of, it's like a wellness sort of mecca of the world. And on the great food, my goodness, I actually came here with a good friend of mine called JMO, or Jonathan Moran.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So we dined here with a couple of friends, and I was in absolute awe. I had no idea how good Gwen was going to be until I started eating. There was so much intention and conscious eating. And that's actually one of the reasons why I had to talk to you with my wellness audience, because obviously the way in which your food is prepared, it's so thoughtful, and it really is about taking time. And tell me about, because anything that takes a long time is always going to be good, right? So whether it's in relationships or whatever it is, like the longer it takes, the better it is, and the longer it lasts. So tell me the thought process is about, you know, letting the meats age and things like that. Tell me the wellness benefits.
Sure. Well, I sort of think that, like all good things, you need a heartbeat, you know, and for Gwen, it really is our butcher shop, because we are a full-service butcher shop, European-style butcher shop, but then, of course, a restaurant as well. But the heartbeat of this place really is that, because we go and we work with these small farmers and we find brilliantly produced meats. And, you know, that really starts with the nitty-gritty, the breed, the feed, the age, the treatment of those animals. And we obviously have a lot of respect and love for that process. And then we bring the meat in. So firstly, procuring great quality ingredients, and then treating them the way that serves them the best, you know. So with beef, that's dry aging. With Wagyu, it's slightly different. With poultry, it's different again. So we sort of, I guess, depending on the product, we'll figure out how we can enhance it. You know, and we might dry age something for 80 or 90 days, you know. So hanging something in a locker which is dehydrating and losing volume, you lose weight as you dry age. Of course, it's a much more expensive way of doing it, and a much slower way of doing it.
But it's healthy.
But it's good, yeah.
And it tastes good as well. But what I was thinking is it's so healthy because we want everything fast. We want everything yesterday. I mean, they're even using chemicals to quicken up the speed of how wheat is supposed to be dried, for example. And people are having reactions to that, and they're probably, you know, not necessarily gluten intolerant, but they're intolerant to the chemicals that are creating this. So I was really in awe of how you really take the time to prepare the meals, the food, and the wellness aspect of that. So,
and also the charcuterie. We make all of our own salamis and culatellos and prosciuttos, and I think, you know, some of that stuff you hang for 18 months, you know, 2 years. So it's a very slow process, but then you can do it the natural way, where you're using salt as the preservative rather than all of the other nasty stuff that can go into deli meats.
Love that you say that, because people have been told that, you know, salt is a bad thing, but it's the processed version of the salt. You know, if we think about the derivative of the word salt, it comes from the phrase salts of the earth.
Right.
And salts of the earth is, you know, rich in minerals like magnesium and other things. So using salt, we're probably so deficient in magnesium, not just because of our sedentary lifestyles and the stress and everything, but also because we need the minerals from this food source that we've been told to stay away from.
Right.
So this natural process is an eye-opener for me, and that's why I was just so passionate about Gwen. I was also passionate about the story behind the knives that we got served. So when the food came out, this beautiful box also came out. You guys, it is absolutely stunning. This in itself looks antique. Is it an antique
It is
box?
actually, yeah. We get a lot of our stuff from flea markets and recycled pieces. I just, when I drink from a vintage teacup, I think about, you know, the 100 years that it's been around for.
Do you really?
And all the different cups
you
of
sit there
teas.
going, oh,
well,
the
you know,
stories.
it feels so different than just getting something from a store. And
That's true.
You know, so yeah, I love it. And the same with these knives. So we ask people to choose their own weapon when they have a steak, and we have different knives from different parts of the world that have different meanings and reasons. And yeah, they're all sort of. I sharpen them every night before service, so
all
we
of
make
them?
sure that they're all perfectly sharp.
They're all sharpened every night. That's amazing.
Yep.
Wow. See, that's a full-time job in itself. So the choice, and again, the conscious, choices that we make when we're consuming food is so important, because a lot of people are addicted to technology, and gone are the days where we'd flip through a new idea or a Who magazine while we're eating. Now we're scrolling through our Instagram and everything as we're having meal times. That's our most popular time. But this whole experience forces someone to be present.
That's right.
When they're eating.
Yep.
So tell me the story about this, because this has got something to do with your grandfather.
Yeah, absolutely. So, what we did when we went looking for steak knives, because at the start you're like, oh, which steak knife should we choose? And I fell in love with so many of them, and I'm like, I want to give our customers the choice. And we found these two brothers that have a brand called Bloodroot, and they literally make the knives out of recycled steel. So they might find an old tractor or something around the property, and then they'll make the blade out of that.
Wow.
There's a waiting list of a couple of years these days to buy one of those blades.
This one could be a tractor. This has got some old aged wood.
Exactly, yep. So there's that. This is Laguiole, which is a vintage French knife. Also another beautiful steak knife. This is with a bone handle. We have things that are antlers from deer that we've used in the shop.
No part goes to waste.
It really doesn't, and it's a pretty cool part to know the story behind even the knife.
Well, I guess it's a Paleolithic sort of era type where we use every part of everything that we, consume.
Right.
Nothing going to waste. But being present, being conscious with our eating, and then the storytelling, which is so healing. So tell me about the influence of your grandparents, because I have to share with you, I used to own a cooking school in Melbourne for people with food intolerances, right?
Wow.
So they'd discover, I'm now celiac, what do I do? And it's quite stressful. So I would teach them about nutrition and how to cook some meals just to get them a kickstart. But what happened was I realised where this passion came from. I used to always pretend that I was sick when I was little, when my grandma from Morocco would be coming to visit. And my mum would check my forehead in the morning, and she'd go, you have to go to school, you haven't got a temperature. And I was like, I'm so sick, it's my stomach. And she probably thought to herself at the time, if there's ever a time to just leave my daughter at home, I'll just do it now because my mum's here.
Right.
So she would leave in the old Valiant down the driveway, and then I'd be like, yes. I'd get up because my grandmother would be cooking from scratch, which she taught herself in Morocco. God bless her. Her mum died in her arms when she was 12, actually, and she had to look after her 4 baby brothers and sisters and teach how to cook and everything. So nothing went to waste. She was an extremely talented lady, and I wanted to learn from her. So I'd walk to the kitchen all keeled over and going, Margot. Her name was Softer Margot. And then I was like, and she turned around and she would go, oh, shut up and sit down and watch. I know you're not sick.
She knew.
So she knew, right? And everything was from scratch.
Yep.
Do our grandparents have a huge influence on us when, we're growing up in how we eat? And
for sure.
Yeah.
Look, I think there's not much in life more special than your granny, Grandmas are always sweet, and they don't have the stress of a mum or a dad, because we're always, as parents, trying to juggle and smuggle everything else, and I kind of feel like grandparents get the good bit without all the stress of being a parent. But for me, my grannies were both good cooks.
Right,
totally
they both
different.
were. Yeah.
One was a country cook, Gwen. Grew up in Woodend. And
so her name was Gwen.
Yep.
This is why the restaurant's called Gwen.
Exactly.
Yep.
And she lived on a farm, and they ran animals. She had a stove that was still heated by a wood fire. The hot water got heated by that same wood fire. So I always remember it being really smoky and smelling fantastic. She loved lamb. She would always cook lamb. We'd cook a lot of that here as well. She also made this incredible shortbread that I remember as a kid.
Shortbread,
So good.
Did you ever get in there and help? Is this how you started to learn?
Not as much with Gwen, but with Maud, my other granny, which I named my other restaurant after. I did cook with her a lot, and very simple. She was from Yorkshire, actually, so she would make this fudge, which I've done a bit of research on later in life, and turns out that it's a Scottish thing called tablet, which sort of comes from up in that part of the world.
Amazing.
But it's really, really good and very sugary and sweet. And as a little kid, I just loved it when she'd make it, and she taught me how to make it. It was sort of those early formative years that you're learning from your granny or your mum, and And I think that it stays with you for sure.
Well, it certainly does. Like, it's a meditative thing for sure. And I think that's what I want to encourage, my audience to remember to do, that when we're cooking, it takes us back to that time. It keeps us present. And then we're enjoying that food so much better, which is so great for wellness and just even digestion. But tell me a little bit about your wife, because she's a wellness buff as well.
She is. She's into all of it, and I learn little bits and pieces from her. I think, her diet is very important, and I love that because it's sort of, she changes it too. She does different things at different times, which I always like that challenge.
Yeah.
Of suddenly having a new wife to cook for.
Well, you have to be, I think, not just varied with your diet, but dynamic, right?
You do. I mean, if you stop and think about it, it's what you put into your body, and your body then uses that for its energy and for everything else.
You heard it from Curtis Stone, everybody. You're now preaching to the choir.
Well, the food's so important.
Well, I always say that our nutrition is actually information to our DNA. It's not really just calories.
Yeah.
So this is, again, the fundamental philosophy behind your cooking and, the experience of eating your food is understanding where it comes from.
Yep. And then having the skill set to be able to, because that only gets you halfway, getting good ingredients. And then it's what you do with it from the chef's perspective, right? So how do you apply fire or heat or steam or poach or whatever cooking technique you want to sort of use. Or maybe you want to leave an ingredient raw, or maybe you want to pickle, or you want to preserve or ferment. And all of these things that have sort of been developed over centuries, we have at our fingertips to play with.
So can you give us 3 hot tips on pickling or fermenting, or what did you say? How do you want to, what did you say, smoke or fire or whatever it was?
Yeah, absolutely. So they're all ways of preserving food, for the most part. And it probably comes from a day when there wasn't refrigerators or freezers, and it was like, well, I've got this cabbage now, but I need to eat it in 6 months' time.
Well, I love this because I don't know if our viewers know this, and our listeners, for example, when you're preserving foods, there are usually numbers in brackets on the back of the food packet, right? And if you had to look up that number, you'd probably be mortified, right? That's why they're in numbers, they're disguised. But there are natural ways, as you say, and some of them are.
Well, look, you can, if you want to buy a fermenting jar, this sounds a little out there, but it's a lot of fun.
Your wife's going to love this.
You can have little fermenting jars happening. I make my own kimchi. Again, we're spoilt by culture and what it's given us over the years. So you can sort of look to all of these different cultures and see what different people have done, and out of necessity, but then you can use that to bring in spice and to bring in salt and sour and sweet and bitter. Some of those words, for instance, almost sound like, oh, bitter, I don't like bitter. Well, no, bitter plays a part. And as long as you use it carefully, it can be a brilliant part of
Do you think maybe people's palates have changed because of the preservatives and all of the stuff that we've ruined, the coating of our tongue, and our taste is different now because... Yeah. It's so interesting because some people are, oh, I don't like salty, or I'm a sweet tooth, or I don't like bitter, or whatever it is. But would you say that we could all learn to love it?
Oh, absolutely. And I think even the processed foods, they'll actually create candies and lollies that are specifically sour, right? So even the processed foods will still follow what we know and what the differences that you can find on your palate, So I actually think the more you experience, the more you grow and the more you learn, and that's the important part. It's very easy to look at kids and be like, oh, well, they're just kids, I'll just give them buttered pasta because that's all they like. And then I have this conversation all the time with parents where they're like, how do I stop my kids from eating hot dogs? And I'm like, don't buy them. I don't buy hot dogs.
Yeah.
And my kids don't eat hot dogs because there's no hot dogs to eat. So
well, I always say it's not even a food. So I educate my son Bodhi and I go, well, if we had to actually look at how that was processed, you'd realise that's not a food source. It's just a chemical now.
Right.
Because there's no nutrition in it, right?
Yep.
So they've never had it before? You've just never bought it and they've never had it?
Oh, look, I'm not crazy about it. I do let my kids, I don't want to make them these unicorns that don't experience the world. They should be able to go to a movie with their mates and eat some snacks and candies and whatever. But I think for the most part, what you want to do is keep a good home, and you want to eat and cook yourself. Because we fall into this trap. People think it all the time with food delivery. And as a guy that runs a restaurant, you don't want to eat from a restaurant 7 nights a week because we do use a lot of butter, we do use a lot of salt, we do use a lot of food. It's meant to be a special occasion.
It is
it's not meant to be your day-to-day.
Yeah. And it is a special occasion. So on that, I remember though a time when my son Bodhi, I let him have a birthday cake with all the preservatives and artificial colours and things like that for the first time. I think he was 6 years old. And I said, yeah, go ahead, because I used to fill him up before he would get to the birthday parties, so he'd be full.
Smart.
Yeah.
Smart.
And then I'd like, go ahead, do whatever you want at Quade's birthday party. And I remember driving him home and he had his head hanging out the window going, Mum, I promise I'll never do this again.
Felt sick.
And he did feel sick. And the thing is, it was like one of those moments where if he was perhaps a teenager, he might be doing that with alcohol one day. It's kind of like, I told you so, let him try it, never doing it again.
Right.
And he doesn't. So, okay, let me know about an interesting story, a life-changing story that could be a mentor or it could be somebody that came in to dine where you changed their life. Is there something that really stands out for you during your career?
Oh, God, I've had so many cool memories and moments in my career because I've been lucky. I've travelled the world and I've gotten to see all sorts of things and meet different people.
Yeah.
You know, I think the first time I ever met anyone that was just 100% obsessed with what they did was when I met Marco Pierre White.
Okay.
Because he was an incredible chef, but he worked his ass off, and it was that work ethic and that desire for perfection that just drove him, you know, and all he wanted to do and talk about was food, and that was it. And that's all he cared about.
Yeah.
And he just worked super hard. And I think I first met him and I was like, this will be fun, but you don't think it'll be fun forever. You just like it'll be fun to do it for a day, right? Or for a week or whatever. But then once you start doing it, you find that obsession building within yourself. And I don't know, it's sort of, I think, to me, it's always been much more than food. It's been a lifestyle. And I think when I first met Marco, I was like, oh, it was just infectious. And it was... And look, he ran a really tight kitchen, and if I told you some stories, you'd probably be like, "Oh my goodness, isn't that illegal?" Or you know, especially in today's world, there wasn't much that happened back then. You know, it's 25 years ago, I suppose. So
Hang on, what are one of the illegal things that like?
Well, look, just in the way that you treat your staff these days,
right.
and the way that he would talk and treat us.
He got away with it, yeah.
Well, we loved it.
Yeah.
We wanted it. We wanted a trainer. We wanted a teacher. We wanted a chef who was super disciplined and didn't accept any nonsense, accepted nothing but perfection. And if it wasn't perfection, it got thrown in the garbage.
Wow.
Where these days, if you did that to someone, they'd be like, "Oh, that hurt my feelings." It didn't hurt our feelings. We actually loved it because we thrived on it and it made us good. You know, so I don't know. I've got a lot to say about it, but I think when you're lucky enough to find somebody that has that level of passion, then suddenly you're like, well, I'm all in.
Yeah, and the committed ones are often crazy. They're geniuses.
Yeah.
His ears are definitely burning now that we're talking about him, right?
I'm so grateful for everything that he gave me and taught me over the years, and it probably didn't feel great all of the time, but because sometimes disappointment doesn't feel great.
Yeah.
You know, sometimes you feel like you haven't achieved what you needed to achieve, but I think after going through that for years, then it does give you the ability to achieve, which is pretty cool.
Well, you are a perfectionist, Curtis, and I think that the Michelin star that was awarded to you was like, oh my gosh, finally, because it was well deserved. And I think just needs to hurry up, and you need a few more now. Like, hopefully they're going to start realising. You know, would you call yourself a perfectionist?
Oh, of course.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I think I'm easygoing. I'm an Aussie. I have that sort of easygoing mentality. But at the same time, if we're going to do something, then I want to do it right.
Do it properly.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, it's been such a joy getting to know you and understanding your story here on Well To Do. It's very healing for our listeners to understand who we are, what makes us, what drives us, and hopefully inspired a whole bunch of people. So thank you so much. I've actually got a copy of my book to give to you and your wife, and some packages from Kylo. But if you loved everything that we've been talking about, make sure you follow Curtis Stone and Gwen, and anything else that they can stay in contact with.
Maud is our other little restaurant in Beverly Hills, so even better than following us, come and have dinner with us. We'd love to see you.
Hope to see you there, and thank you so much.